Hey there, Indiana. Welcome. Good evening. This is a special presentation here on the Progressive Indiana Network, a virtual town hall with congressional candidate Brad Meyer, a Democrat running in our 9th Congressional District. We are anticipating your questions in the comments section on YouTube, on Facebook Live, on Progressive Indiana Network at progressiveindiana.net. Hope to hear what you've got to say, so please get those questions in wherever you're at. I understand we're having a little problem with the Facebook feed. I'm going to try and get that worked out while I invite Brad to give us an opening statement. Brad, well, I'm going to turn the floor over to you here and see if I can figure out what's going on over there.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you, Scott, and the Progressive Network for hosting this, and I'm looking forward to the next hour or so and looking forward to questions and input from viewers. A little bit of background on me. I'm a 7th generation Hoosier, and frankly, I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives in the 9th District, and I had never planned on running for office. My wife and I were on a glide path to a nice retirement, and then when Trump came to power, it was clear that that we were facing some real challenges, and I felt strongly enough that I quit my job a year before early retirement so that I could run for office.
Well, very good. You know what? I am really bummed to see that this thing does not currently appear to be working on Facebook Live. So I do not know what is going on right there.
Would you like me to continue buy you another 60 seconds or so?
Well, I frankly don't know what's going on there, but we're gonna encourage folks, if they're having problems getting us on Facebook, to please move over to YouTube if you can. Find the stream over there for the youtube.com/@Progressive Indiana Network, and it should also be on progressiveindiana.net. You will find us over there. So I guess let us go ahead and get started, Brad. We had a couple questions come in the weeks leading up to this event. So we've got a couple things to get us started, and I will. I don't know what's going on the Facebook there, so that is unfortunate. And but hey, George Wright over on YouTube says YouTube's working fine. Thank you, George. So hey, let's get those questions over there. But I want to begin, Brad, by asking about something this morning on Meet the Press. Representative Ro Khanna of California called on House Democrats to vote against a measure that would reopen parts of the federal government Monday. As you know, we're kind of in a little bit of a partial shutdown right now. The Senate put together a compromise package to kick the can down the road a couple weeks on a measure funding the federal government while they debate DHS funding. Now, Khanna says he is a firm no, and he is going to advocate that his colleagues also vote no. He told Kristen Welker today on Meet the Press, saying, quote, "I just don't see how, in good conscience, Democrats can vote for continuing ICE funding when they're killing American citizens." So, Brad, I want to ask you, if you were currently occupying the seat that you are running for now, would you also vote against a measure that continues to fund ICE and the Department of Homeland Security?
I would vote against continuing to fund ICE. And there's a variety of reasons and it's not just against ICE. There was a budget impasse, and then they cut a deal and said, well, we'll talk about healthcare and we'll talk about these other things later. They kicked it down the road, and we're down the road, and we're still dealing with people that are acting in bad faith that we can't depend on anything they say anyway. So I think that we need to screw our courage to the sticking place, and we need to stand up for what we believe in and force a better solution than what we're rolling over and taking right now.
Okay, so that is a no. Now, I guess Let me expound upon that, Brad, and ask. So there were things in the compromise package that senators came up with, and they're asking for some very moderate proposals to maybe tamp down ICE's worst abuses. They're saying no more roving raids, just targeted enforcement for individuals for whom there is a judicial warrant. The Senate Democrats are saying no more masks. We want body cameras. Very, very minor things, I guess, to shave off some of the roughest edges from ICE. Let me ask you, can ICE be reformed, or is this agency beyond repair, and should it be abolished?
Well, we need border enforcement of some sort, right? And ICE, I think that was formed in like the 90s. I mean, I don't think ICE has been around forever. So can it be reformed? Absolutely. Can it be reformed under the current leadership and the current administration? Absolutely not. There's a difference between, can we trust that they will do it under this administration, and is it redeemable at all? Those are different questions.
Okay. I do want to let folks know in the chat, we are now live on Facebook Live. The link that we gave you before may not have worked, but we are on Facebook Live on the Who's Left page. And I don't know if maybe Jack is capable of blasting that out to your folks, but we are at Who's Left on Facebook, live over there now. I do apologize for the technical difficulties in that regard. So, yeah, David Kirk on Facebook requests a link over there. Maybe I could put that in, well, if I put it in the chat, they won't see it on Facebook, will they? So I guess, Brad, let me ask you in the meantime, and I want to stay on another, contentious subject, particularly amongst Democrats within our party. Now, California Governor Gavin Newsom came out against a proposed billionaire wealth tax in the state of California. They're trying to get that on the ballot for this coming November general election there. Newsom says he is not in favor of it, at least at the state level, because of capital flight, but he is theoretically in favor of a wealth tax at the national level in principle. Is that something that you can get behind, a wealth tax at the federal level?
Well, my economic perspective is to start out by looking at what we need as a nation. Set aside wealth tax for just a second, and then I will wrap back around and I will actually answer your question. So what we need is policies that help people move away from the poverty line, get above the poverty line, get out of poverty. We need policies that will help people be able to start their own businesses. So when you talk about billionaires, my standard line is I would rather have 50,000 people that each make $20,000 more a year than one more billionaire, right? I'd rather have 1,000 more millionaires than one more billionaire. And our policies really are not prescriptive, but they encourage one result or another. And our policies more and more have been pulled further and further to the right, that it encourages more billionaires, more hundreds of $1 million people, and more higher wealth people. And it's really dividing us and pushing most people more and more toward financial insecurity. And so I want to, and they've done that on purpose. The policies have been shifted in favor of the wealthy more and more. And my perspective is that we need to shift those policies so that they favor the working people and small businesses. And that's an important distinction. We need small businesses, right? That's where the strength of our economy really comes from. Now, to do that, taxes for people that make a lot of money, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, the billionaires, those taxes are going to have to go up. But I guess philosophically, where I am less comfortable is when you say, I want a wealth tax, it just sounds punitive. And frankly, it sounds a little, at least to my ear and to a lot of independents here in Indiana, like class jealousy. And I think that if we start by saying, this is the kind of society we want and need, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is how we have to fund it, I think that a lot of people can get behind that. And it's really a framing issue that I am uncomfortable with. So if we start from where do we want to go as a country and what are the economic policies we need to benefit us, let's talk about that. And then it's a result that we would tax more on the billionaires.
Okay, very good. So now here we've got one in the comments section that I want to bring up, and this we are going back to the discussion of ICE and Homeland Security, and this one is from Liliana Young. Hey, Liliana is a candidate here for a state house in the 61st District of Indiana, friend of the pod. So Liliana asks, if a bill were put forth to completely dissolve ICE, would you support it?
If you're talking about dissolving the immigration and not replacing it with something else, then no. We need to protect and we need to have laws surrounding immigration. And frankly, and the thing that we have to keep in mind is that in Southern Indiana, the last time the Democrats lost 2-1, right? And the talk of dissolving ICE is really popular, frankly, among Democrats. And then we look around and realize if we don't have an alternative, if we don't have an answer to address the legitimate needs of the country, and we're just reacting emotionally, we lose elections, right? We lost a lot. We lost a lot of elections when people were talking about defund the police. And I know that among people, it's still popular, but it doesn't play well here in Southern Indiana. And if we're going to win elections, we need to understand that there has to be another sentence after we're ending this. What's going to happen after? How do we address the legitimate needs of the country that ICE was intended to do? We had ICE under Obama, right? We had ICE under Biden, okay? And it's not about ICE. It's about the brutal policies and the brutal implementation of this administration. And I think that there's going to have to be a house cleaning, and there's going to have to be people held accountable for their behavior that is illegal and unethical and immoral and against our Constitution. But it is how it's being wielded that is the real danger. It is not the institution itself.
Okay, let's ask about the folks who are wielding that power irresponsibly right now. On Facebook, David Kirk asks, do you support removing Trump through impeachment or invoking the 25th Amendment or some other way? Now, obviously, the 25th Amendment, that's not really up to you. That's up to the cabinet. But I guess, in your question, as somebody who's running to be in the House, the impeachment would have to, go there. It would have to pass through you. Would you support impeaching President Trump?
I think that there is ample evidence and ample justification for an impeachment. The unfortunate thing is frankly, we've done this twice before. And the thing we have to remember is that impeachment is equivalent to indictment. I think there's ample evidence to find him guilty. I think there was evidence to find him guilty the last time. So yes, I would support that. And there's also real actions that Congress needs to take, even outside of impeachment, just to say, you don't have the legal authority to do that, and to push back.
Very good. So here's another question, sort of a different, a change of direction here, Brad. We talked about, small businesses a little bit ago when we were talking about a wealth tax and Governor Newsom there in California. George Wright asks on YouTube, what incentives would you support to encourage the creation on new small businesses in rural and small town communities?
So that is a great, I was going to say that's a great question, and it is, and the other ones were great too, and I don't want to diss them. There's a variety of things that need to be done to help encourage small businesses, especially in rural communities and small towns. Number one of the big things that rural communities and small towns need is broadband and good internet access. There's still a lot of places in Indiana, especially in rural Indiana, that don't have good access, which makes doing things like we're doing today less possible. And with all the new technologies coming in, there is more and more opportunity for small businesses in rural Indiana and small towns to be competitive, right? And then you look at what are the impediments that are holding those businesses back, and one of them is healthcare. A lot of people are not starting businesses because they are tied and chained to their current employer for healthcare, because doing it on their own is too expensive. And the ADA helped with that, and then they have gutted it and undermined it to the point that it's now getting increasingly expensive. And even people that can afford it are looking at it going, I might be able to do it this year, but by next year, it's going to be a problem for me. So there's a trust issue. Universal nonprofit healthcare is hugely important to the ability of people to be able to start their own business. Number two, there are restrictive rules on non-compete agreements, and most non-compete agreements really should be abolished. There are a handful of circumstances that we need it, but mostly they're just businesses are trying to protect themselves, and it intentionally keeps the creation of small businesses down. There's also, and this hasn't gotten much publication with everything that's happening, the Small Business Administration has been gutted. And I think that some areas have been almost completely removed. And I think that their overall funding has been cut by at least 40%. So it's just policy after policy after policy that make it hard to start a new business and make it hard to be successful.
Here, I want to turn to somebody over on progressiveindiana.net, and unfortunately, I cannot bring those up on the screen yet. StreamYard, if you're listening, let's get that functionality on here. That would make my life a lot easier. But Nora Sallows asks, how do you feel about spending public dollars on private schools? Ohio's public education system used to be near the top, but since the GOP passed legislation to fund private school tuition, their schools have deteriorated and local levies haven't been able to keep up. And I will add, Indiana is in the same boat. Now, education and things like vouchers and public education funding is largely handled at the state level. What do you think the federal government can do in situations like these?
Well, the federal government, through the Department of Education, has a limited role, and because of the Constitution, they're painted into just a portion of what can be done, right? And we'll take a step back and start with what is my philosophical position on education, and then we can get into the minutia. Overall, I am a strong supporter in public education, and what they're trying to do in Indiana and other states is to undermine, weaken, gut, and then sell off the education system into private hands. And there's a lot of reasons that that's bad. And one of them is that a lot of these are ideologically based rather than fact-based. Their results are not what they should be. And so you look at it, and this is one of the conspiratorial things that you will hear me say, and there aren't many of them that sound conspiratorial, but I think it's a fact. If you want to take an education system and you want to put it in private hands and you know that it doesn't work, but it ideologically aligns with you, how do you do that? The first thing you have to do is you have to stop people from seeing that transition doesn't work well. And who is it that's responsible to give you that information? There's two groups that's responsible to give you information on how your education system is working. The first one is your state. And since they're the ones doing it, they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you what they want you to hear. And then the second one is the Department of Education. It is their job to provide parents and communities the information that tells them whether their schools, public or private, whether those systems are working well. And that's why they're gutting the Department of Education. It's not over ideology. It's about trying to blind us so we don't know what's really happening. Right? That is the core thing. You look at the Department of Education, there are a handful of things they're responsible to do. They're responsible to give information to communities and parents on how schools are doing. That is constitutionally acceptable, but it's unacceptable to people that have bad answers that don't want you to know it. Second thing that they're supposed to do is they're supposed to ensure equal education in the states. Now, if a state sets up a policy that their policies are uniformly bad, the federal government can report that it's bad, but they can't step in and stop it, right? And then the third thing is to make sure that they are that federal law for equality and access are upheld. All of these aren't radical ideas. These are just basic issues of fairness related to education. And the fact is that they are doing things right now that decades from now will still be having an impact, right? So, for example, the federal government was, they agreed, I think, for when you look at people with disabilities or learning disabilities that need additional help, the federal government agreed, I think, to pay for 40% of that cost. They've never paid more than like 13%, right? They've never met their obligations to support federal laws and guidance to help people that have disabilities get a good education, right? But what they've done now is they're pulling that back, and they've just gutted the Department of Education. So now it's not, I don't know what the numbers are, but the thing that we have to understand, and the reason that there's a sense of urgency on my part, is there's windows of opportunity where if you can reach a child that needs help and you can reach out to them, then you can make it better and you can help them get on a trajectory. If you wait and you don't give them the help they need when they need it, 50 years from now, there will be people that are now my age that are suffering from educational deficits because we didn't reach them in time. We're going to see the bitter fruit of what they're doing on the education system, especially with disabilities, we're going to see for decades in the future. And, if you just want to be cynical about education, these people are going to pay for our Social Security. It is really important that they be smart and they be effective and that they be good citizens. And frankly, the change from public to private education isn't cutting it, and they're blinding us to it. Very long answer. Sorry.
No, but good. So no, you hit it something there at the end, and it sort of leads me into my next question. You talked about the privatization of public education, and much of this has to do with the influence of big donor money, particularly from the charter school lobby, and lobbyists in general are a big problem in our political process. And this goes along with another question we received ahead of time, but it's right here in the chat now, so I'm going to ask it the way Chelsea McDonnell does. She says, do you believe money in politics is the root of many of the issues being brought up, and do you support overturning Citizens United and supporting state-funded elections?
So we'll start with the most clear, and I've been getting this question more and more recently. It's I think starting to get some traction, and that's on overturning Citizens United. So the way Citizens United was written, I do not see a clear path to overturning that, right? I'm not saying it shouldn't be overturned. I'm not saying it wasn't a bad idea. I'm not saying that we shouldn't work on it, but I have not seen a clear answer that we could put legislation forward that would survive the same Supreme Court review that gave us Citizens United. So I don't know what the handles and the mechanics are, frankly, of how we go about doing that. So money in politics has always been a problem, right? And it has been worse than it is now. I know that's hard to believe, but in our history, it's been worse. And it's certainly been better than what it is now, right? I think that we need to come up with a better solution, right? So, for example, right now, the maximum that I can get from any one donor is $3,500 on a congressional, but other candidates can get more, and there are less restrictions, and frankly, right now, under the current system, one of the reasons the Democrats are so upset about Citizens United is we're not getting as much money through that system, right? And we're under attack, frankly. I mean, Act Blue has been under attack recently as well. Supporting state-funded elections, happily for me, that's a state issue to address. So I would defer to some of the state candidates. But I don't know enough about the mechanisms and the practicality of doing that. And I guess the shortest answer is that right now they have cut in the state of Indiana funding for pre-K. They've cut funding for food assistance. They've cut funding for medical assistance for people that are poor. And if we're only going to be able to force the state to get a certain amount of money and open up their purse, I would rather them give it to people that are hungry rather than giving it to me as a candidate.
Sure. So I guess I want to follow up, and we've got a couple follow-up questions in the chat, and I sort of want to group these together. Okay. George Wright again asked, would you support government-funded campaigns as a method to get around Citizens United? Sounds like maybe no, not exactly. That's not what the government should be spending its money on. Okay, so the Supreme Court it sounds like, is the problem. They are the reason we have Citizens United, and we take them at their word that the way around it is for Congress to pass a law, or even better, for there to be a constitutional amendment that says, no, money is not speech. Nora Sallows again asks on progressiveindiana.net, are you familiar with AmericanProgress.net, an organization that is promoting a constitutional amendment to limit campaign contributions? 24 states have signed on. And then I will also ask a question, if the Supreme Court is the problem, what can we do about them? Do you support efforts to reform the court, be it through expanding the court, packing the court, defunding the court, hitting them with very binding ethical agreements, ethical constraints that several of the current justices are already in violation of? Maybe get rid of them. I threw a lot at you there, Brad.
I'm taking notes, yeah.
So, yeah. So,
okay.
How are we going to get around this thing is the real question.
Okay. So, So I think that there's a lot of merit to the idea of government-funded campaigns. I believe it was done in England, and it made a significant shift in the composition of their lawmakers. People that you didn't have to be as wealthy in order to run for office, and I think that that is a good thing. And not being particularly wealthy myself, I think that it's a good thing. The thing that causes me pause is right now we're seeing enormous abuses of power by this administration. And if we had a government-funded system, I would be very surprised if I saw a single farthing from the government for this Democratic candidate who is a strong progressive in favor of a whole bunch of stuff that they disagree with. The idea of government funded begins with the idea that the government will be fair and dispassionate. And right now, there's a great example that that's not where we are today. So I think that there's a real risk with that. Okay. You also asked about the American Progress effort. Honestly, I have not. I've taken a note on it. I will look at it, and I will seriously consider it. I think that there are several constitutional amendments that we need because our system is not working the way it needs to, and this is one of the ones that I'll look at. When you talk about addressing the court, again, the court is siding with what I consider and what many people consider abusive and unethical practices, right? If we could get better control of the court, that could be a very dangerous precedent. The only thing between us and autocracy today is the courts. And if there's a system that allows the government to constrain what the court does, you can bet your bottom dollar that Trump would be using it right now to stop the courts from defending our rights. I heard, I can't remember what her name is, the speaker for the president. She said that 2/3 of all of the injunctions by the courts in this century have been against Trump. And she's acting like this is evidence of a conspiracy. I'm saying it's evidence that what you're doing is evil and pernicious, and the courts are doing their job, right? So do I want to rein in the courts in areas that I disagree with them? Absolutely. Do I want that power to be available for people to do even more unsavory, dangerous things? No. So I'm, and keep in mind, we being Democrats, tried to pack the court in 1936, something. I don't remember what the number was, right? And there was a lot of blowback, and everybody has treated that as a third rail. We have to be mindful that we cannot put principles in place that could be used by unethical people to drag us further into autocracy. And if we start talking about packing the court, there's nothing that will keep Trump from putting 20 more people on the court. If we start talking about defunding the federal courts, he's going to defund the federal courts, right? These are very powerful and dangerous precedents that we need to think carefully about.
I will say, it is in the Constitution, the power given to Congress to determine the composition and makeup and the rules of the Supreme Court, and to, do things like impeachment if justices get out of hand. I'm going to go back to Liliana over on YouTube here, and she asks, since we know that some of the Supreme Court justices have taken bribes, Clarence Thomas, and since we can prove material harm from many of the current Supreme Court's decisions, do you support impeaching some justices?
You almost had me at a yes, and then you threw in one clause, right, that gives me pause. The answer is yes, to start, unequivocally. There needs to be better constraint on behavior and double dealing and conflicts of interest by the Supreme Court and maybe even the lower courts. 100% agree. If they violate the ethical standards, then they need to be impeached. But that's happened. I looked it up, and I can't remember the number of federal court justices that have been impeached is shockingly low, in spite of all the bad things that some of them have done, right? The thing that causes again, we have to be thoughtful about what we do and how we do it, right? When we say Supreme Court justices have taken bribes, that needs to be addressed. They need to be impeached because they took a bribe, right? They need to be impeached for taking a bribe, regardless of whether they then went in favor of us or against us, right? It's the one line I'm pointing at my screen that says, since we can prove material harm from many of their decisions. If he had taken a bribe and he had thrown in with us, would we still be calling for his impeachment? And the answer needs to be yes. We would still be calling for their impeachment. It's not about whether we agree with what he did or what he didn't agree on. It's what his behavior did, right? So, anyway.
Well, yeah, that's very good. So, thoughtful and fair, right? Now, I guess I want to switch directions here and go back to David Kirk, who asks an economic question. And Kirk says, at what dollar amount do you think the federal minimum wage should be set to? Editorial note, it is $7.25 currently and has been so since 2009.
So I think that the federal minimum wage should be $20 an hour. And I think that the first $20,000 of income should be tax-free.
Very concise answer. How did you arrive at 20?
Well, it is one of the numbers that has been talked about as far as being practical. It takes you, frankly, to $40,000 a year. If you made $20 an hour times 2,080 hours a year of labor, it's about $40,000, $41,000. $41,000 is below the mean, but it is above the minimum in most places for them to be able to keep at least some sort of a roof over their head and be able to feed a family. It's not a lot. Living on $40,000 is not a grand experience, but it's enough to cover basics. And if there's a family of two, then that also helps. But we need a minimum wage so that that people can buy essentials, right? And that's not what we're doing now. $7 and something an hour is what, $17,000. I saw a quote once that said that, do you really think that if you're, and I don't mean this pejorative, if you're flipping hamburgers, that you really need, a living wage? And it's like, yes, if you are working 40 hours a week, you should be able to afford food, and you should be able to have.
Can everybody else hear Brad? I just lost him. And that might be me. Chat, can you guys hear? You guys okay?
I can hear you.
My earbud may have just died. I don't know. It could be my end. Okay. Yeah, there we are. All right. Jack says he still hears you, and I can hear you again.
Okay, good.
Yeah, my bud must have gone dead there for a second. I think it might be time for some new ones. So let me then ask a follow-up question on this topic about the minimum wage. George Wright asks, would you support the minimum wage being increased annual based on CPI, or a chained price index, I believe is what that stands for. So I guess you get to your 20, how do we keep it from being stuck there for the next 15 plus years, the way it has been now?
Well, so in principle, yes, I like the idea of it being tied to the consumer price index. There are, when you talk about big economic principles, you can build in, through doing that, an acceleration where it begins to feed inflation, and without getting, and an economist would probably do a better job of describing this, but my concern with that would be, inflation goes up and then this goes up, which drives this up, and you get into what's called in engineering a critical race condition, and sometimes, and we're not there now, but sometimes holding wages where they are, it'll cause, when the prices go up, they'll shoot, and then they'll come back down, and they'll oscillate back around a more reasonable balance. And if we don't have the handles available to us to use good judgment, we could paint ourselves into a stricture that doesn't work well for us when we need it.
Okay. Let me go to one of our questions that was asked beforehand on Facebook. I want to ask, and this is a strategy question, and I believe this came from the Ripley County Democrats, friends of the pod over there in the eastern part of the state. Beyond the Democratic base in Bloomington and New Albany, what is your specific strategy to flip moderate and rural voters in the more conservative counties of the district?
Well, that's been a subject of a lot of discussion, and I'll tell you that a lot of people have come to me with advice, and one of the things is that they say, and it's true, that the majority of the Democratic votes are in 3 counties, and I need to spend all of my time in those 3 counties courting the existing Democrats, and that might be a smart strategy to get through the primary, because in the primary, which is coming up May 5th, and I need help in the primary. Hint, hint, please vote for me in the primary. But the problem is that if I do that, and if all I do is concentrate on the 3 Democratic strongholds, I'll lose in the general. And we have to be reaching out to all of the counties, right? And I've spent a lot of time going to county party meetings, talking to people, trying to understand what their issues and concerns are and getting to know the base. We have to reach out. And frankly, another way of looking at the advice I'm getting, if you take it and just turn it just a little bit, what they're telling me is ignore rural Indiana and just go to the population centers. And you know what? That's part of why we're in the mess we're in as a Democratic Party. We have to start reaching out to people in more rural areas, and we have to start advocating for policies that make a difference in their life. And we have to try to help them understand that we're looking to make things better for all of us, not just the people in the cities.
Well, so I guess along those lines, and I want to say this question also came on that same thread from the Ripley County Dems,
Yep.
you know, to that effect. That sounds like that's going to require a lot of work. This is a massive district. And they ask, you know, winning a district this size requires a massive volunteer team. How many active volunteers do you currently have on your field team? And are you integrating digital outreach to reach young voters?
We have a strong base in many counties, and we are actively looking to expand that, and we're going to need to expand that. And we are right now, and Jack is on another line. I think that we have social media that we're in the process of setting up for 8 different platforms for digital outreach, right? Right now, most of them aren't active. We have the accounts, and we are beginning the process of spinning those up. But that's going to be an important part of it. And social media is going to be an important part of outreach, because it is, it's 2 hours wide and 2 hours deep, and it's 18 counties. It's a lot of territory.
It is a lot, and it's a lot of folks to reach. And you know, it's nice to have those digital tools to be able to reach you know, a wide audience with the push of a button, and also to get to where the young voters are. And to that effect, you know, a question. One thing that the youth voters really care about, we saw this in the last election, they didn't turn out for Kamala Harris, is because she didn't really stand up and denounce Israel's genocide in Gaza. And so the question asked is, Gaza has deeply divided many in our party. What is your position on continuing U.S. military aid to Israel, and how would you use your seat on the House floor to advocate for a long-term resolution?
Well, I guess we're done with the softball questions in this, because this is an enormously divisive issue, right? So, number one, I believe that there needs to be a stable and durable peace in Palestine, with Palestine and Israel. The issue is that both sides really are unwilling to admit is that in order to do that, there has to be some basis of trust, or some basis of a solution in a zero trust environment, and those conditions don't exist right now. There is a legitimate argument to be made that the Palestinian, a 2-state solution has always been the right answer. And right now, there isn't a clear path to make that happen. And we're on the wrong path, I think, to make that happen. I think that the path that we're on right now is that we America and Israel will suppress the Palestinians. They'll get control. There will be peace, and then there will be another cycle of violence at some point in the future. And in the long run, it is in the best interest of Israel to find a durable peace. And it is in the best interest of the Palestinians to find a durable peace. And it's right now, frankly, just a mess. And I don't see the path. I don't see the path to get there right now. But it is not in the best interest. It is not a good alliance to just rubber stamp anything that your ally does and not give them good counsel and not provide support. And I know that there were a lot of Democrats that were angry at Biden because he didn't come out more forcefully against what was happening in Palestine. But look what we've got now, right? There is a practical side to working toward getting a solution. And what you saw with Biden was, and I know a lot of people don't like it, and I know that it's going to be unpopular for me to say it, but I think it's worth saying that he said, you are at war, you have been attacked, you have to get control of your borders, and here is military aid, and you're crossing lines you shouldn't, right? And in part, he lost the election, in part because of that. Well, all right. The Democrats lost the election in part because of that and because of the division. And it's quiet now. I don't think that that's evidence that we've got actually a good answer. It just means it's quiet now. There's going to be another cycle.
Well, let me ask over on progressiveindiana.net, there was a follow-up to this. And I guess, kind of the question with Biden and Harris is they didn't call it what it was. Christina Person asks, do you believe that a genocide occurred in Gaza?
I think that if the United States is going to have a role in bringing about a durable peace, I think that calling it a genocide is going to alienate us from the ability to have a real impact on making a durable peace. And I think that Biden, Biden had some, it wasn't great. He had some influence in Israel and some influence in some quarters of Israel. And the second that you start using that terminology, you have just lost an ally of 75 years and the strongest ally that we have in the region. And I know that is unpopular. But the fact is, if we alienate them entirely, we're not going to help bring about a durable peace in the future. That there is this thing that we used to have called diplomacy, and it in the long run works.
So let me, it's a big lift certainly to make any kind of peace happen there. So I want to go back to another big lift. You mentioned we were talking about Citizens United and whether it should be a constitutional amendment is the way around it. You mentioned in passing that there are other constitutional amendments that we need. With what, we've only got a few minutes left. I want to make sure we get this in. What are some of those other constitutional amendments that we need?
I think we need a constitutional amendment for a universal health care. It should be enshrined in our Constitution that we don't have to go broke just trying to stay alive. And I know that this is one that you and I disagree on, and we can talk more about this in the next one. But I believe that we need a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget. In my opinion, well, not in my opinion, Congress is not doing its job. It's one of its primary jobs is the power of the purse. And we should have a constitutional amendment that says if you do not have a real functioning and balanced budget on October 1, you're not allowed to stand for election in your next cycle. So if you're a congressman, after your last after you get out of office, you can't stand for federal election for 2 years. If you're a senator, you can't stand for 6 years. If you're president, you can't stand for 4 years. Nobody in the administrations that fail to get a budget passed on time and on budget, unless there's an emergency, should be allowed to stand for election. And all this stuff about they shouldn't be paid until it's done, it's not going to make a difference. These people are not going to be affected by missing a few paychecks. What they're going to be affected by is they lose power if they don't use it for the benefit and execute responsibly.
You're right. You and I could go around and around on that one.
We probably will the next one, and that's fine.
And we will. So you mentioned the next one, and I do want to use this opportunity with a couple minutes left to pitch that, hey, we are going to do this again exactly 4 weeks from tonight on Sunday, March 1st at same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully there's no technical difficulties on the bat channel next time. But 7 o'clock on March 1st, we're doing another one of these. So if we didn't get to your question tonight, there will be another opportunity. We're going to do a few more of these before the primary, which, like you said, is on May 5th. Brad, just a couple minutes left here. I want to give you the last chance to, say a few words here before we hang up for the night.
So I appreciate everything we've done. I will tell you that we spent not near enough time, frankly, on economics. And our economy, and I mentioned this earlier, our economy is tilted toward the rich, and we all see and feel, and we all know this. But the job of the government is to set policy and tax so that it is tilted for a balanced economy, and that's not what's happening now. And if we don't address that, we're going to have a whole bunch of trouble, because right now you're talking about young people. Young people today are less likely, are less than 50% of them will be better off than their parents were when their parents were 30, right? The ability for people, they're losing hope in optimism for the future, and that has to be addressed. And that's what we need to be talking about. And I know we talk about affordability, but for me, it's also about opportunity, the opportunity to have a fair shot at a decent life.
Very good. Hey, and David, thanks for the audio chip there. You are right. It was coming from my earbud and not from my mic. So we got that figured out. I appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody there in the comments. A lot of great questions tonight. Again, we're doing this again in 4 weeks. So plenty of opportunity for folks to get more questions in. Brad wants to talk about the economy. So you guys think of your best economic questions and let us have those over the course of the next 4 weeks so we can talk about those next time around. So I guess for now, that is all. It's been a great opportunity here to have you tonight, Brad, to give you this chance to talk to your potential constituents and your hopefully voters coming up on the primary on May 5th. But for now, where can folks find more information about your campaign?
What a wonderful question. You can find more information at bradmeyer.org. That's Brad Meyer, MEYER.org. And if you've got questions, you can call me at 812-929-0045.
That bold move, giving out the number on the live stream. That is a man who wants to hear directly from the people. Brad Meyer, appreciate you being here with us tonight on the Progressive Indiana Network. Thank you so much, and best of luck out there on the campaign trail.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for hosting.